So this is going to be a bit of a long-term review on the Breville Barista Express Model 870, also marketed under the name Sage in other countries. And the reason why I'm really making this video is just to give some people some feedback on kind of a long-term experience with this machine. I bought this particular machine in 2018. And I've recently decided to retire it from my use. I'm going to be giving it to a couple of friends because I've got a different machine now. And so I kind of wanted to go over my experience and some of the pros and cons of owning this machine for anybody that is thinking about buying it. And I'm going to be targeting this at the same people probably that Breville designed this machine for. So if you're somebody that's interested in potentially buying this machine, it's probably your first one or maybe your second, right? Maybe you've just had kind of one of the really small introductory machines, or you've been using pods or something like that. And so that's kind of who this video is targeted at. So if you're somebody that's looking at machines that cost $1,500, or you're somebody that's looking at buying a grinder that costs $500 plus, well, you're probably not interested in this machine to begin with, so this video is really not for you. If you're somebody that's been, getting a latte or a cappuccino at Starbucks every day, or, Dunkin' or your local coffee shop, and you're looking at saving money by making your own every day, and you're just looking for kind of an all-in-one solution, well, then this is probably something that's on your list. And so as somebody that has owned one of these for 4 years, used it every day for 4 years, figured, hey, I can make a video about that experience and maybe help you with that decision. So I'm going to start off with the conclusion, the kind of the too long, didn't watch the video, don't really want to spend a lot of time just to cut to the chase. I think this thing is great. I think this is a really good machine. It's a good package. It works. It is convenient. It is easy to use. And it makes really good espresso. Particularly on that vein, I would say, unless you live next door to probably the best coffee shop in your city that's obsessive about the way that they make their drinks, you're probably going to get better espresso out of this machine than the coffee shops that you go to. Again, now if you've got, really top of the line coffee shop that they're very, like I said, they're obsessive, they're enthusiasts themselves, well, maybe they do better. But on a consistent day-to-day basis, this thing is going to make better espresso than the vast majority of coffee shops that you're going to go into. And I will go a bit further, and as somebody that has had the opportunity, and I've gone to Italy, I've had cappuccinos in Milan, and, I was actually in Italy just a few weeks ago. Even European style, nice coffee shop, stuff like that, this machine is capable of making espresso that I think is kind of just as good as what you're typically going to find in most of those shops. Now, again, world-class shops, top of the line. Again, if you live in a big city, the very best of the best there, well, yeah, they may be able to do better. They certainly are going to have better equipment. The thing is with this machine, if you get good beans and you get the thing dialed in for those beans, it's going to make really great espresso for you. It's really going to only be how much time you want to spend getting it dialed in. Beyond that, it's going to do a really good job. Now, again, if you're somebody that's really interested in kind of more obscure techniques, that really wants to mess around with a bunch of different things like pressure curves and stuff like that, well, then you're probably not going to be interested in this machine anyway. So that said, yeah, that's my conclusion. I think this thing is great. It saved me a ton of money because I didn't have to go spend, $45 at a coffee shop every morning. You can make espresso in your underwear. You get thirsty in the afternoon, want to make a drink, you can just walk over and make one. Saved a ton of money. It's paid for itself multiple times over. So that's the quick and dirty. I think it's outstanding. It's a great value. I paid $550 for this machine, but again, that's been 4 years ago. It's currently more like $700. So again, that value proposition there may have changed a bit from whenever I bought it. But overall, really good experience. Now, next up, I'm going to talk about the downside. What are the problems? What are the issues that I've had with the machine in my experience on a day-to-day basis? Well, one thing that you may be able to see is right here, and this is the tamper that comes with it. And you can see it's magnetically attached there. Well, this thing, I've dropped it a couple times. Yeah, it's chipped. So it's not indestructible. You know, you drop this thing, you can break it. And so I have gotten a couple chips from dropping this thing on my tile floor. The biggest issue that I really had is every now and then I would get a leak out of this machine, and it would typically happen on the left. Over here I would find some water. Now, I'm still to this day not really sure what's causing that. It's intermittent. It rarely ever happened. It was not much water at all. I would not call it a leak. It's just more of some kind of intermittent issue that would happen, and I'm not sure if it was something in the drain into the drip pan. You know, it's got like a drain hole back here and back here. So I'm not sure if something was maybe getting misaligned whenever I would slide this tray back in, and maybe it was leaking out underneath and coming out under the edge, or if it was my fault and possibly at the back with the water connection here, it's got a little push-in valve. And maybe I wasn't getting this thing seated quite right, and maybe it was leaking out. So if I had to guess, it's probably my fault. I likely wasn't getting the reservoir seated just quite enough, and it was likely just leaking there, and that's probably why it was intermittent. So that was kind of the one issue that I really had, was kind of that intermittent water. But again, I had it on a good counter where that didn't really matter at all. The other thing, like, let me mention, why am I actually getting rid of this machine? Why did I get a different one? Primarily, I got a different machine because I wanted a different machine. After having this thing for 4 years, I started watching a lot of videos, and I thought, oh, I want to get a fancier machine, and so I did. It wasn't really because this thing was having problems. Now, I was wanting a new machine already, and then the Breville gave me an excuse. I went to fix my espresso one morning, and it kind of had some weird hiccup, and it was building pressure, but I wasn't getting flow, and I really wasn't sure. And over the next day or two, I actually took the thing apart trying to see what was going on. I thought maybe the pump was failing or something, but it was weird because I was getting pressure, but I wasn't getting flow. And then all of a sudden, a couple days later, I had already ordered the new machine because, like I said, I was excited. I was kind of ready to get another machine anyway. Well, I ordered one, and then it started working again. And all I can think is that it had maybe a tiny clog somewhere coming into the group head, and it was building pressure after the gauge, but wasn't getting flow. And like I said, it works fine. Now, I never did figure out what the problem was. It is currently working great. And so I've decided, since I've already got the other machine, it was already ordered whenever this thing started just working again. I'm just going to give it to some friends because at this point, you know, it's paid for itself on my end. I've got the other machine. I like it. And since I've already got my whole other setup now, and this thing's working again, I'm going to give it to some friends, and now they can use it until it breaks. And maybe it'll break again in 6 months, but again, after 4 years of use, I think it maybe just had a little bitty clog in the line that cleared itself out, and now it works fine. Other issues, I would say that some people may find that the steam coming out of the wand is not overly powerful. Now, I didn't really ever have a problem with it. It does work. You can make a good cappuccino with it, no problem. It just may not be quite as fast as some of the other machines out there. You can change this tip, but I actually don't think that'll help a ton. I don't think it's a problem with the tip being, you know, more or less effective. It just doesn't put out a ton of steam. But, you know, don't get me wrong, it puts out enough steam. It's just not going to blow you away. So that may be something that some people will say, oh, it doesn't put out a lot of steam. That's true, but it puts out plenty. I never really had a problem with it, so that may be a potential downside. The other thing that I've heard people talk about is the grinder, because it does have a built-in conical burr grinder, and a lot of people have claimed that they've had problems with it. Now, personally, I never had any issues with the grinder. Some people have said it doesn't have fine enough increments. So there's a little dial over here. You get this dial and it just rotates. And yeah, it's not a super fine adjustment. It's pretty coarse. You know, it's got like 15 or 20 different adjustment increments here. So yeah, it's not as fine as some people may want. But the one thing I'll point out about that is, yes, this only has so many increments. However, internally, so I pulled this out. This is the top on the grinder. And so within this wheel, if I try to turn it to the light, you'll see, maybe hard to make out, but there's some writing here. And it says fine and coarse. And within this ring, there is actually other adjustments that you can make. And so what I did whenever I found that I wanted to be kind of in between here, you can come in here and actually change the internal setting and get yourself kind of a little different grind. And then at that point, you can set this thing back up and get your grinder back together, and it will change the degrees of grind on this wheel. And I was actually able to accomplish whatever adjustment I needed that way. And I really only needed to do that once. And once I got it changed, then I was able to dial in a grind that worked great, and I never really had to mess with it again. So yeah, this may not be a fine enough increment for some people, but combined with the internal adjustment, which admittedly is a bit of a pain in the butt, but you are able to actually get a very fine increment on your grind adjustments. So what other cons might you have? Well, it does have kind of a proprietary portafilter size. You're not going to be able to use regular baskets in this thing. It's got its own little size. So some people, you know, would consider that a downside. Certainly accessories, you got to get them specific for this. So that's definitely, I would say, a con. That said, it comes with single baskets, double baskets, both pressurized and non-pressurized. I never actually got a different basket. I just used the stuff that it came with, and it worked fine. I have heard, I don't know if it's true, but that Breville uses a slightly different size to get a slightly thicker puck. And because of, you know, they have engineered the whole thing to work together, they do that because on this type of machine, they get a little bit better function with that style. Now, I don't know if it's that or if they just like it being proprietary, because then, I don't know, maybe they can sell more accessories because, you know, they make them themselves. I don't know. But there you go. That's a potential issue with this being its own proprietary thing. There are some other little things that I would say are not really cons. They're just things that I wish were different. I wish the pressure gauge actually had PSI. That's kind of frustrating. I don't actually know what pressure this is indicating. So yeah, that's a problem. The filter size here, it says single and double. If the power blinks, this thing will default to single. Now, I have the double basket in because I only ever use the double basket. And so that's kind of an issue because what this controls is, this is the switch for the grinder. And so that's how it turns on. Take this thing out. You can see it's got this locking tab on the front. And whenever you push this thing in, you get a click. And that turns the grinder on. Well, it's just a timer. This thing goes from, I don't know, like 5 seconds. It's on the low end, and then every click's like another second. I think at the very top end, it goes about 15 seconds on single. And if you do a double, it gives a little extra time. It's like an extra 5 to 7 seconds, I think, on the grind for a double. And if the power blinks, it defaults back to single. And whenever it's the morning and you're not really, you know, awake, and you just come in and you click that thing in there and you go to grinding and it shoots out a single, well, that's frustrating because the power blinked and it reset. And so it stays on double as long as it keeps power, but it can default back to single. And if you don't catch it, you get the wrong grind amount. And then you're like, oh, I don't have enough. But because the double isn't simply twice as much grind, it's really hard to get it back right. So you kind of waste that coffee. Then you have to click that to flip it over to double, and then you can, you know, do whatever. But yes, that's kind of a frustrating thing there, I would say. The grinder itself is difficult to empty and switch beans if you need to, because it's conical burr, so all the coffee is falling into it. And if you ever want to take the hopper off, that's easy, but then there will be coffee beans that will remain in the grinder, and you either have to grind them through or like vacuum them out. There's not a real easy way to get the coffee beans that are in the grinder itself out. I haven't measured retention or anything because I don't care. I actually was, one of those people that did what you're not supposed to do, and I literally just kept beans in the hopper and just ground using the built-in thing. I found it to be totally consistent, within reason for my purposes at least. So I didn't actually have to do that much, but if I did, that would be a bit of a pain in the butt. Beyond that, not really a lot of other problems. I'm trying to think of anything else that I found frustrating on a day-to-day basis. I guess at the back, and let me flip this thing around. So the water reservoir here pulls off, and within this reservoir there is this thing, which is the filter. And so you pull this off, and it's got a carbon filter in there that you have to change once a month or so. And so it's got this little dial. This thing is extremely difficult to turn. I found, like, it's got a little nub there, but trying to turn that thing just about pull your fingernail off. So that could be easier to turn. Again, I'm really down into the nitpicky stuff. This just has months on it, so you can see, like, when are you supposed to change this thing next? That's kind of hard to turn. So I would say, they could definitely make that easier. And then honestly, the most frustrating thing on a day-to-day basis is that whenever you go to clean your portafilter, pull this out, this thing right here, this little plastic piece, and I'm not exactly sure what this thing's for, if it's just a spacer, I don't know. But getting this thing out, what you have to do is you turn this over, you unscrew this, okay, and then you have to push it out, which, my finger is not big enough, my pinky finger is not big enough. You got to find something to push this thing out. So, finding something that will just push on the plastic was kind of a pain. And to really get in there and clean that, you do want to get that thing out. And so that was kind of a pain in the butt. On a day-to-day basis, cleaning that was probably the most frustrating piece. Another kind of little issue, the grinder is kind of loud, I will say. If you're the only one up and you want to grind some coffee and make yourself a drink, that could be a little loud. The machine itself as a whole, the pump is a little loud. It's not too bad, but overall there is some noise from the grinder. I now have a Eureka grinder that is quite a bit quieter than this, so maybe that's something to be aware of. I'm not going to say that it's loud. It is just a little loud. And I do think sometimes people exaggerate stuff like that. I mean, look, it's a coffee grinder. It's going to make some noise. But yeah, that's something to be aware of. It could be a little noisy. Durability-wise, you can see I've got some paint chips. I'll pull this thing out. You can see I've got some chips in the finish. This is metal. The paint's kind of come off. That's because I actually did what you're not supposed to do, and I occasionally would put that in the dishwasher. So you're not actually supposed to do that, and that's, I think, what's caused some of the finish to chip off, because I don't have any finish issues anywhere else on the machine. This is the only spot. So yeah, I would occasionally take the drip tray items and throw them on the dishwasher. And so since I would occasionally put these in the dishwasher, that probably is what caused that finish issue. So that's kind of it, I would say, for the cons. And I would say overall, the list of issues and cons is actually pretty short and pretty insignificant for me. Now, again, depending on what you're into, some of those things, maybe it's just a deal breaker. I was making a drink or two a day on this thing. I would say if you're making less than 4 or 5 drinks a day, you probably aren't ever going to have any issues with anything about this machine. But now, I wouldn't want to run a small coffee shop with it. That might not be great. But yeah, for the most part, I just really didn't have any major issues. It never really broke down. Like I said, it had that one hiccup after 4 years where it finally started having some issues. But that was literally just like a couple days, and then it started working again, and I hadn't had any problems since. And so, again, I don't know what to say as far as durability and reliability. It was really good, I think, especially considering the price, and all the features. And on that note, let me talk about why I think it's such a good machine. So what are the pros side? What are the good aspects of this machine? And the first thing I will say, overall, man, Breville's a big company, and they have a big engineering budget, and this thing is made for people to use. And what I mean by that is the user interface, the usability of this thing is amazing. Having used some other espresso machines, this is one of the easiest darn things to use that you will ever find. It is amazingly set up and convenient and designed for humans to use without issues. So the way it works, you get up, you hit the power button. Now this machine does not have a boiler. It does have a thermal block or a thermocoil. Now, a lot of people don't like that. I will say I love it. And the new machine I got also has a thermocoil. And what's great about that is you turn it on and the thing is ready extremely quickly. It's, I think, less than a minute for this thing to warm up. Like, you can be making an espresso very quickly, right? You turn it on, you start grinding. By the time you get your puck tamped, it's basically ready to go. And that's amazing, right? It's so fast and easy. As far as adjustability, you've got the grind amount that dictates basically how much time the grinder runs, and then you have the grind setting for how coarse or fine it is. And so basically, yeah, you do have to tweak that, and you have to program your shot times. Now, these are volumetric, so it has single and double, and they are independent. And so you set these basically by using the program button, and then you push that, and you let it, do the shot. And when you want it to stop, you push it again, and then it will save that amount of volume, because internal to this machine, it has a little flow meter, and it is measuring how much water it is trying to push out. And so getting it set up is pretty easy. Now, once you get it set up and you've got your grind and everything set the way you want it, your volume, time, extraction pressure, all that where you want it, at that point, it's literally turn it on, grind, tamp, put your thing in, push the button, and you never have to mess with it. Like, it just freaking works, and it works great. I actually thought the grinder worked really well. It's pretty easy to dial in. Now, it's conical burr. A lot of people may not like that. Again, if you're in that debate, then you probably aren't looking at this machine. Anyway, I thought it worked great, right? It was very easy to dial in and get a shot working. And when you did, it ground pretty consistently, and everything just kind of worked for me. I think the drip tray design is amazing because of how easy it is to use. Again, it's 3 pieces. It's got the accessories back there. I actually took this thing out and I just put that somewhere else. And so you just have this tray, and the tray just slides in and out. It's got this top metal portion, and whenever you want to clean it, it comes off. Now, this you can definitely put in the dishwasher. Internally, you've got this plastic piece, which works to kind of try to separate the grinds. That doesn't really work. You still got to pull it out and clean it. I do think they could make it a little easier to clean. There's like some internal channels that they could make that easier. But the nice thing, this thing is huge, right? You don't have to empty this that often. It's a very big drip tray, and so that is super convenient. Also, the way it just slides in and out. Right, you pull the thing out. You don't have to tip it. You pull it out, and then you dump it, right? It's really easy to do without spilling. It also has a little float that will tell you, hey, it needs to be emptied. And so as it gets fuller, that little thing will pop up. It will come out, and you'll say, oh, I need to dump this thing. It's getting full. And very easy and convenient to use. It's got a pretty good amount of deck height here. See, this is the pitcher, and it fits under even with the spout on this thing. So I didn't really have too much problem, whatever cup I wanted to use, because I know I'm one of those heathens that doesn't use appropriate espresso shot glasses or cappuccino cups or anything. So I'd use whatever 8-ounce mug or whatever I wanted, and it fit, right? You got plenty of deck height there. It's got hot water, which I basically never used. The steam wand, I think I would say that this is pretty adequate. Good range of motion. It's very usable. I would say that this could be a lot worse. It works, right? It just works, and everything kind of just functions really easily. The way the grinder works, really easy. Very convenient having this thing always right there, so you don't have to have another place to put your tamper. One thing I'll say about the steam wand is to use that, it's got this switch over here, and you turn that thing to steam, and you'll wait. And once it starts going, it will start pushing steam out, and it basically self-purges. You put it back to standby, put this thing in, and then boom, you've got your steam coming out. And I found that even though it could have, been more powerful, it actually produced a very good steam, a very good amount, as far as it was enough. But more than that, it was a good quality steam. It was really dry. I didn't get a lot of water in my milk with this thing. It just worked. The water reservoir, super easy. It's got a handle. Pull the thing off, go fill it, come, drop it back. Great, right? Just works. It's got little fill lines here so you know how much to fill. And once it gets down below this min, it will start having some issues trying to pull water into the system. So you do want to make sure you keep it full. But yeah, I mean, that just, it works, right? The grinder, this hopper is pretty cool because you can turn this little lever and then just lift the whole thing off. And so you don't have to empty it to pull this off, and it will keep kind of your coffee. Now, that's where it does retain some of the beans and stuff, and you would then have to vacuum if you want to adjust in there. But this is really kind of neat. And also, you can see on the bottom, whenever you lock this thing, and so basically it won't come off if it's locked in. So whenever you lock it in, you turn this and it locks. And what you'll notice is there's these little pins that come out that keep it locked in. That is also a safety feature because up here there's a little switch, and one of these pins will push that switch. So if you don't have the hopper on, you can't operate the grinder. And so that's something to be aware of if you're wanting to do single dosing. You can't do single dosing without the hopper. So put the hopper on, lock it, and now it's open, and you can single dose it like this, right? But you can't do it without the hopper on. It comes with a good amount of accessories. Again, it's got extra baskets, the little cleaning disc. It comes with, milk frothing pitcher there. Couple of accessories that I never really used because, I don't know, they just weren't necessary. It has a little clean me light, so this thing keeps track of kind of how much you've used it, and it will say, hey, I need to be cleaned. And so then you'll pop in one of the single baskets with this, put in a cleaning puck, and it will automatically clean itself. Again, I may have possibly had a little clog in there after 4 years. Otherwise, again, never had any issues. Now, I always used filtered water out of my refrigerator. I didn't just put tap water in here. But never had a problem with clogs or lime buildup or anything. So just freaking worked. And so I really have a lot of good things to say about this machine, especially now that I have purchased a new machine, a separate grinder, and my new espresso setup costs almost probably 3 times as much as what this thing cost. And yeah, I do like it, but at the same time, looking back, this was a great machine and a really good experience. And, I'd say overall, like I said, the usability, just the way the thing works, the way, it's got the clean me reminder. You can push this thing and automatically grind single doubles, and it's got really good knobs, and everything just kind of works, and it's easy. The programming on this thing is really easy. You push the program button, you push which one of these you want to program, you push it, it just starts working, and when you want it to stop, you push it again, and then it's programmed, and your next shot will do the same volume. Just really easy to use, and I think that's one of the advantages that Breville has. Huge company, huge engineering budget, and they spend a lot of time making sure that their stuff is user-friendly, and I would say this thing's extremely user-friendly. And, as far as, what kind of coffee, what kind of espresso did it produce? Great. I thought it was great. I think in my head, I thought that it could be so much better if I got some different machine. And when I did, I realized, for the most part, the coffee you put in it is going to be the most important thing because the machine is capable. The grinder is capable. Is it the best thing in the world? Well, look, again, if you are willing to spend as much as this whole machine cost on a grinder, then yeah, I'm sure you can probably get a better grinder. But for what it is, it works really great. Now, as far as if you wanted a better grinder, you can get the Breville 840, which is basically this half of the machine, and then get a separate grinder. I would actually probably, it's something cost effective, something like the Eureka Chrono or Filtro, and then put some espresso burrs in there, and you're going to have a good flat burr grinder. That's what I've got now. But I will say, unless you are somebody that is really, really advanced in your ability to taste the differences in coffee, I don't figure you'll really be able to tell much of a difference between this and a flat burr grinder. Again, a lot of people are going to be able to tell that difference. You probably weren't shopping for this machine anyway. For the regular people of us who, I'm never going to claim that I can taste the difference between, a particular coating on the burrs of my grinder, like some people claim. I would say, yeah, if you put them side by side, you may taste a difference, but I think it will be a lot smaller than people on the internet would make you believe. I think the thing, once you get it set up the way you want and you're using the beans that you want, you've got your grind dialed in, you've got your shot volumes dialed in, and your pressure working where you want, all that working together to produce the shot that you want, I think it's going to do really, really well. And can you do better? Probably, sure. But I don't think you're going to be able to do better for anywhere near the money. I think it's a good machine. I think it's durable enough for consumers. Again, I've used it for 4 years with very few problems. I think it's pretty darn good. And so that's kind of where I would stop, right? It's got a lot of pros, some cons to be aware of, some little quirks, but overall, really good machine. After 4 years, I really enjoyed it. So I hope that's helpful for anybody that's looking at one of these. Again, I would recommend it for somebody, again, unless you're way off in the deep end on espresso. If you're just a regular person looking to save $5 a day, not going to the coffee shop, man, this thing's killer for that purpose. So anyway, if you got any questions, just feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks.